Good day, good day. I'm currently in New Zealand. Obviously, I'll be here for the coming 3 years, sorry. I'm showing you the other side of my room. I actually built that yesterday on my own. I was very proud of myself. I did put some holes where they're not supposed to be, but for the rest it looks good, and it still hasn't fallen apart, so yay me. So, before talking about New Zealand, I will continue talking about my trip. I have 2 more subjects to discuss, and the one I'm going to discuss today is Thailand. So after Bali, I waited 5 hours at the airport, as you might remember, and then I flew to Kuala Lumpur. By the way, at the airport I also met up with a girl from my hostel in Ubud, so that was very nice. She's a very, very funny and crazy South Korean girl, but we had a lot of fun together. She made me laugh so much. And so then I arrived in Kuala Lumpur, had to wait there for like 6 hours, as you might remember, and then I took my flight to Krabi because I didn't want to be 6 days in Bangkok, because 2 days for me Bangkok is enough, and I thought, oh well, the south of Thailand is cheaper than Bangkok anyways. I was wrong. The more you go to the south of Thailand, the more expensive it gets. So I arrived in Krabi at like 7 in the morning, super tired because I hadn't slept, because I was stressed to miss my plane, even though I was there for like 6 hours. And the very typical thing is I wait there, and then, for example, in Bali, the gate changed last minute, so I end up running anyway while I've been at the airport for like 5 hours. So that was a pain in the ass, but I always make my plane anyway. So I arrived in Krabi, super tired, got my bus into Krabi town, and then I told the bus driver, I was like, oh, can you please drop me in the center? He was like, yes, yes, yes. And so people one by one get off the bus, and then it was all tourists, and then at some point he was like, you get out. And I was like, this is not the city center. And he was like, yes it is, there's one bungalow over there. And I was like, this does not look like the city center. And I was like, dead. And he was like, get out here. And he was being such a bitch. So I got out, and he dropped me 3 kilometers away from the city center. So I had a grumpy breakfast, and then with my big bags I walked those 3K all the way back to the city center, in which we were 5 minutes before, and he wasn't like, I was very, very pissed off that morning. So I didn't even look that much for a hostel. I went to the first one I could see, and I was like, what's your price? It was pretty expensive, but I was like, okay, whatever, I just need to sleep. So I slept for like 5 hours, and then I woke up, and there were like 3 girls in my dorm, and they were like, are you traveling alone? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, oh, do you want to come to the beach with us? And I was like, yeah, sure. So we went to grab something to eat, and then we went to the beach and chilled there for a bit. And then we had dinner, all 4 of us. It was 2 American girls and 1 South African girl, and they were very, very nice. But during dinner I realized that it was the first time during my whole trip that I was spending time with more than 1 girl and no guys around. So it was a bit like weird for me. I was like, ooh, a lot of ostrich in here. Plus they put me in a all-women dorm. Like, the lady asked me, and she was like, do you mind a mixed dorm? And I was like, no, I'm good with mixed dorms. And then she put me in an all-women dorm, and my bed was like, it was like bunk beds, but the 2 bunk beds were like basically on top of each other. So I forgot her name. The German girl and I were basically spooning, but it was nice. We laughed about it. So that was funny. The next day, so this was actually, it wasn't in Krabi town, it was in Onang Beach, a bit further than Krabi town. And the beach was nice. They have super cute boats. However, I was used to like the blue water of Indonesia, and I had forgotten that it wasn't that way in Thailand. Actually, I hadn't been to water in Thailand other than waterfalls, so I discovered that it wasn't blue like in Indonesia, but it was still super nice. And so the next day I went with the German girl and an Argentinian girl who were both in their 30s. We went to hike on Riley Beach. So we took a little boat, we went to Riley Beach, which was beautiful, and we tried to get up to a viewpoint, which we ended up not finding. They ended up finding it, but I wasn't with them anymore. And it was like proper climbing, and it was like proper jungly, like pushing like trees aside and like climbing over stuff and like trying not to slide down. So it was very nice. And then at some point we saw like this huge ladder and we're like, should we not? We decided not to because we wanted to live. And so we didn't find it in the beginning. So then I went to go see the viewpoint they had seen the day before, and they went to go see another cave. And they ended up finding the viewpoint we were looking for. So I went to the other viewpoint, which was very pretty. And next to that viewpoint there was a lagoon. So you had to like go very steep steps down, which were actually pretty dangerous. And you had like ropes that you had to attach yourself to. So I must admit, it was pretty dangerous, pretty dodgy, but it was very nice. Like I really enjoyed it. It was like very adventure-like. And the next day I actually did have muscle pain because like you have to lift up your whole body or like lift it down. And the lagoon was very pretty, but because it was marée basse, the tide was low. It was a bit muddy, so it wasn't like really swim lagoonish thing, but it was beautiful. Like there were barely any people, and you had the sun, you had the palm trees, you had the quietness of nature. It was great. So I really enjoyed that. And then I got back to Onang Beach, and I got a boat to Phi Phi, which is an island. Yeah. So the boat was 2 hours. It's very well organized in Thailand, honestly. But again, they like put you in a bus to put you here, to make you wait there and then put you back there. But you arrive on time and there's usually no problem, so it's fine. And you get little stickers so you don't get lost. Fantastic. And the 3 girls were with me as well, but we ended up sitting on the boat anyway. So we got on the boat, and I was sitting outside, and then it started raining, so everyone like went inside, and I was like, I'm gonna enjoy the rain, I like nature. I regretted my choice after an hour because I was soaked and it was not nice afterwards, but in the beginning it was. And we saw a beautiful rainbow, so that was very nice. And then we finally arrived on Phi Phi. I don't know why I chose to go to Phi Phi actually, but it was a good choice. I was happy with my choice. I don't know, I just wanted to get out of Onang Beach and like see as much as I could before going back to Bangkok. So I arrived there, walked around to look for a cheap hostel, and then the South African guy helped me, told me, yeah, go to this hostel. So I went to that hostel, very nice. Directly met a British guy, Greg, with who I ended up spending like my 2 days there. And then later that evening I met another girl that was in our dorm, and her name was Vanita, and she was awesome. Like, we were very, very, very different, and it was with her, like, Greg would work, and then us two would walk around town, and like she would have a Coca-Cola, I would have a beer, we would chit chat, and then she would end up going home and I would end up going out. So we would do that, and the first night, like, she was just sitting in her bed. She had been in bed the whole day, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna ask her if she wants to come with me. So I was like, hey, do you want to go grab a drink? And she was like, I don't drink. And I was like, do you want to go grab a cola? And she's like, I was like, okay, it's up to you. And then she was like, fine, I'll come. So she came. She's from Singapore, by the way, with Indian background. Beautiful girl. Yeah. So then we ended up walking, and it was a bit awkward sometimes, but it was nice, so we started talking. And then she went back home because she didn't like partying anymore. And I went out partying. It was very nice, like the beach. Oh, and I had amazing fire shows. It was like local guys doing the fire shows, and their bodies were just, there's not 1 gram of fat. It was just amazing. And they would slackline with fire in their arm, like in their hands. Oh, it was really, really, really impressive. Like compared to the fire shows we had in Pai, this was just like fantastic, honestly. Sometimes I laugh because it's like inside jokes that I get but you don't, but still I think it's funny, so bear with me. Yeah, so then the second day, walked around town, went up to the viewpoint expecting it would be the same like hardcore stuff as Riley Beach, and then we actually hesitated to go back to the dorm to like get proper shoes. I'm very happy I didn't, because I would have felt like a fool. It was just like a cement path going up, the easiest thing in the world, but the view was beautiful, because you had like both sides of the sea. And Phi Phi was actually an island that was hit very, very hard by a tsunami a few years back, so they're still recovering, especially like the economic side of it. But yeah, the view is beautiful. We were there for sunset, and then we went back down, had some food, and then I walked again with Vanita. And yeah, so this time she was like, no, I don't want to come. And I was like, okay, fine, I'm just going to go on my own, I don't care. And then she's like, oh, fine, I'll come with you. And I was like, okay. So she came with me, and we ended up spending like an hour and a half together. And she was like, has it been that long? And I was like, yeah. And it was a very nice talk. Like, we just sat by the water, just talked. And sometimes she was like, oh, you're the craziest person I've met. Because obviously we're different, we have different religions and all of that. So for her, I was a very open person. Like, I don't mind talking about taboos. I actually purposely talk about taboos to go against them. And it was a bit shocking for her, but still she was like, you're crazy, but you're still interesting. And I would teach her things that she had no idea of, and she would teach me things about spirituality and all that stuff that I don't know much about. So it was a very interesting and nice talk. And we also talked about lesbianism. And I don't know, she was like, no, I don't know, it's weird. And I was like, oh, but would you still talk to me if I was a lesbian? And she was like, don't become a lesbian. And I was like, you don't choose to be a lesbian. And then, but then at some point she was like, yeah, but if a girl tells me she likes me, I will start liking her as well. So it was a bit double, but it was a very nice and interesting conversation, and I laughed so much with her. So yeah, I'm very happy I met her. She's a very, very special person. Even though she's shy, like, she like comes out of her shell. And yeah, she was so sweet. She was like, oh, don't leave the island yet, but I had to go back. So that was very cute. And so then I took my boat back to Krabi, and then I had a bus from there to like this random drop place. Then we had another bus, and then we had another bus. But they were not communicative, whatever, in any way. Because at some point, like, we all had different stickers. They were all going different ways, and we stopped somewhere. And we're like, are the people for Bangkok supposed to stay in the bus? And they're like, oh, no, yes, no. Turns out we had to change buses. So we did change buses, and I ended up sitting next to this French guy, who was very nice. So yeah, we had good conversations. Unlike the bus to Chiang Mai, there were no blankets and no TV, which was a shame. Especially because like there was something wrong with the toilet in the bus, so like the whole bus reeked. And there was this girl like 2 seats back that decided to puke. Obviously she didn't decide to puke, but I haven't been very lucky with puke people during my trip. But I've survived because I'm a strong enough woman. So yeah, that. So I ended up arriving in Bangkok at 5 o'clock in the morning. I had to wait 2 hours before I could check in. So I went to the McDonald's with the French guy because he was going to Cambodia. And 10 minutes before he left for Cambodia, he realized that he had the passport of one of his friends in his bag. He was like, fuck. He's like, is this yours? And I was like, no, this is not mine. So he ended up giving it to me so I would drop it somewhere in Bangkok. So that was a little stress moment. But besides that, it was a very interesting guy, very nice. Yeah, good to meet him. And so then I checked in, and I met up with Anfi afterwards. Anfi is the girl that I traveled with for almost like more than 2 weeks in the beginning of my trip. And we had no idea that we would both be in Bangkok at that time. We were actually planning on meeting in Indonesia, but that never happened. So the fact that we were both in Bangkok was amazing, and it was so good to see her again. We just strolled around, like did some shopping. Yeah, it was good. And in Bangkok they don't care about bargains. Like I bargained a lot, and it started coming back from like back then in Mozambique. But like in Bangkok they don't care. They're like, they look at you and then they put back the thing and they continue doing what they're doing. So there's no there's not much of a point in bargaining, unfortunately. But I still got my stuff, which was good. So yeah, that night I went to a hostel that she had been to before, and it was like a French invasion. Like there's so many French people. So we all went out to eat, and then we were supposed to go out, and Anfi and I got separated because I needed to go get money with someone that had a passport to exchange the money, which I don't find very logical, but okay. So I did that, we got separated, and I hung out with the French guys for a bit, and French girls, and then I was tired, so I ended up going to bed at 12 while it was my last night in Bangkok. But oh well, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. So I did that, and then the next day I went back to that hostel because I needed to give stuff to some people. And I hung out with 2 French guys for a bit, and one of those French guys ended up being with me in the bus on the way to the airport, where we laughed a lot because there was this Italian guy, like, he was pretty old, and he was like tripping because we were stuck in traffic, and he was like starting to like insult, like, I don't know if it was the driver or us in Italian, and he was like getting really pissed off because we were stuck in traffic, and we were just laughing our asses off. But it was very nice because like we checked in together, and then we had like we had like some bahts left, so we went through all the shops to see where we could get the cheapest food to get rid of our money but still get food. So yeah, we laughed a lot. It was very nice. And he was using a lot of French expressions that I had never heard of, so that was also very funny. So that was my last few days in Thailand, and also my last few days of my trip. Yeah. And that's when I stepped into the plane to go to New Zealand, which was a 18-hour plane ride. Whoop whoop. Yeah, but I stopped in Taiwan, Taipei, and then in Brisbane, and then Auckland was my final destination. And it was a good plane ride. Watched a lot of movies. I actually, in the 2 last planes, I had a lot of space for my legs, for my very long legs, so I was very happy about that. Yeah, it was good. Met some Dutch people as well, talked to them a bit, and then met a Hungarian guy that was my neighbor, and he was there with his friend or whatever. She was also very nice, and they were very sweet because I couldn't sleep because the Dutch guy next to me, because he was a bit plump, he like pressed on his light while he was sleeping, so like the light was shining straight in my face, so I couldn't sleep at all, and I tried to like get the little button, but yeah, I couldn't reach it, so I didn't sleep. And then when I finally got to sleep a bit, like I slept with my head on the chair, if this makes sense. Like I went to sit on the floor in a way, and then the Hungarian people like put a little blanket around me. Well, I was actually really hot and I didn't want a blanket, but I thought it was very sweet that they did that. So I thought that counts. And the food is excellent, by the way, in China Airways. Love it. So good. Breakfast, dinner, lunch, everything. It's so good. Anyway, that was my Asian trip. But I do still have a few things to say. I actually have a list, but that will be for a next video because I can't make them too long. Goodbye!